So we discussed in the previous video how iter works, right? And what is the significance of iter? Let us revise it and then we will write our own custom class implementing iter concept. So suppose if you have a list something like this, right? I can write for loop to print all the element like this. I can also write something like this. Print xi, same thing. As was discussed in the previous video, this looks very simple externally, but internal workings of this for loop is little complex. So how internally system is going about this task is something like this. It would do iter, create an object, iter x. I can store this object somewhere, and now I will write an infinite loop. Here again I write an exception block, and then I print next xi, and in except block I write stop iteration. Say break. This is going to achieve the same task like this. Now I'm printing 1 to 5, 1 to 5 here, 1 to 5 here as well. So when we write for loop, internally system handles the whole task in this particular fashion. It creates an iterator, and then using next function, it takes element by element and prints. Once all the elements of the object is iterated through, it will get into this exception block, and this is precisely where I will break out of this infinite loop. Now what we will do is we will write a class implementing these two important components of iterator. One is iter, and then next is next, and you will see how it really works internally. That will make our concept very clear as to how really system deals with for loop. Okay, so let me write a class here. I say class, I say my class. Okay, I create a dunder that is called init. There's nothing but constructor. This is called dunder method. Dunder is nothing but double underscore. Okay, now I will write something like this. I will pass a list. I say my list. Okay, and then I will say self my list is equal to my list, and I will initialize one variable. Okay, I won't do here. Let it be like this. Now here next, I will explain the whole thing once the entire stuff is written. I create this another dunder method by the name iter. Okay, it does only one thing. I will initialize this variable n to 0 and I return self. Next, def, I'll write next self here. And what I will do over here is I will say if self n is greater than the length of my list, right? That is self my list minus 1. Assuming that self my list, there are 5 elements. So this is 5 minus 1, that is 4. The moment n is greater than 4, then I will raise an exception called stop iteration. Okay. And what is the else part doing over here? In else part, I will say x1 is equal to self my list. Okay, what I will write? Self n. Self n. And then I'm going to increment self n by 1. I will go through the entire code once again. Okay, and then I'm writing here return x1. That's it. Now let us see how it works. What is the idea behind writing so many lines? And can we really mimic the way iter functionality works? Okay, let's see. I will create an object of my class. And since in constructor list is expected, I will not list exactly. Since Python is uh, known to be taking any data type and there is no type description initially. So if I pass 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so what happens in my list? I am passing basically a list. Okay, so my list I have taken, I am passing this. Now self my list has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now how I can see what self contains? I can write obj my list. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 5 is there. Now I will invoke this function. There are two ways of invoking this function, this particular function. First, I can, I can write some name to object. I can say, x2 or whatever you want to write. I mean, x2, or I can say iter obj. Then I will say either I can write iter obj, or I can write something like this: obj underscore underscore iter underscore underscore, like this. Both will do the same thing. Here I'm explicitly calling this by using this obj dot notation, in invoking this. And here what is happening when I'm writing this built-in function iter, automatically it is invoking this and I am passing that object to this. Okay, so what this particular method is doing is it is just setting self dot n to 0. Okay, just see, that has happened. Now what I will do is I can simply say, when I say next, okay, if I say next iter object, now basically what is happening? Iter object is the object that I just pass, right? Pass. And here when I say next iter object, see here, this will go and self n is nothing but 0. And if that is greater than length minus 1, then I will raise this exception. Else what I'm going to do? See, I will come here, I will say self my list self n. What is self n? Self n is 0. I'm saying my list. So basically I am taking the first element, right? And in putting into this particular object. And then I'm saying self n is equal to self n plus 1. So self n I'm incrementing by 1 and I'm returning x1. So this particular entire thing is going to return me x1, that is nothing but 1. I will write this, okay? I will say iter obj, it will print 1. If I invoke this again, what happens? See, now it again goes at this point in time, my self n contains 1, which means it is going to invoke the second element, right? So that is what is happening. Now it is, this is going to get me the third element. Then it is going to get me fourth element. Probably I also have, okay, I have another one. Let us do this. And then what happened, we'll discuss. 5. Now what happens when I say next all over again at this point in time, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So my n value is 4. After taking the last element, I already incremented it. That means at this point in time, my self n contains 5, right? Now again when I say next, I say self dot n greater than this. Now what is my length? Length is 5 minus 1, that is 4. So is self dot n greater than this stuff? Yes, it is. It is 5 where it is 4. Then what I will say? Raise stop iteration. So what happens when I do this? It is going to raise an exception exactly the way my iterator works. See, stop iteration has happened. If I have to again get this value 1 to 5, what I will do? I will have to invoke this function all over again, right? Iter object. So when I invoke iter object again, self n is set to 0. And then again I do next, I will get. So the process of getting element using this method is by writing this function next, right? So it will give me element by element. It will go to the last element. After I have got to the last element, if again I write next, this particular exception is read. So let us try again. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and stop. And this is precisely what happens when I create any object. Like say I create my list. Okay, I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is nothing but, see, everything in Python is object. So my list is an object. I will create iter my list like this. Correct. Now what I did? Next, iter my list. Correct. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, if I do, it is generating this exception raising. So this is what internally, I mean, we can design our own iter method. We can write our own next method, and we can do whatever we want to do. But at this point in time here, what we have done is we have simulated exactly the way iter works with any iterable. So this is the way. iter internally works. I hope it is clear. Just go through this entire code. It could be a little confusing, fine, but if you write this code a couple of times and try to understand what is going on here in this particular thing, in this particular class definition, I hope it will be clear to you. Thank you for watching.